In this video, I'm going to show you a narrowband SHO workflow step by step from start to finish on how to process your astrophotography images. It has been like 2.5 years since I started using PixInsight and 2 years since I made my 4-part PixInsight processing tutorial. I figured that it was time to update this tutorial. Instead of making separate videos, I decided to make one long processing tutorial and include chapters so you can jump back and forth as you want. My name is Morten and you're watching Frost Astrophotography. It has been a couple of years since I made my 4-part PixInsight tutorial on processing an SHO image. And a lot has happened since then. PixInsight has had a lot of updates and we have seen a lot of new processes and a lot of scripts from different people contributing to the astrophotography scene. I've also had a lot of requests from you viewers of my YouTube channel and communications regarding PixInsight processing, and then I decided that it was time to revisit my tutorials and make a new PixInsight processing step-by-step video. I'm not going to go into image calibration whatsoever because this procedure hasn't changed much, and my first video that I'm going to put a link to in the description of this video is still very much valid. I'm also not going to go into great detail for image approval and integration, although I will quickly go through that before we start the processing. These steps haven't changed much either, and there will be a link to this video as well in the description if you feel like you want to know more in depth about this step. And I have put chapters in this video, so you can jump back and forth if you want to and look at the section that is most interesting to you. If there are alternatives, I might mention those in the relevant chapters, but maybe not include them in this step-by-step processing video. And as always, these are my steps that I choose to take right now. It might change in the future, of course, and there are several ways in doing image processing for astrophotography. I also use PixInsight only. It is popular to use different software for different steps, but this guide is for PixInsight only. And you can of course use the steps that you feel appropriate for your own workflow and then jump out into any other software to continue the processing or do individual steps. Let's quickly talk about PixInsight first before we move into the actual processing steps here. It is built up with a large workspace. There are several workspaces that you can have down here. You can click on those. You can have processing icons that you have configured anywhere you like. You can also save and load those. You have process menu with all the processes that we use. We have a script menu with all the scripts that we use. Some of these are included in PixInsight from the start, and some are extra resources that you need to add. You add resources under the menu Resources and Updates, and then you click on Manage Repositories. You can see all of the repositories that I have included here. You can see popular processing tools from RC Astro, such as BlurXTerminator here that we are going to be using today. and other popular tools as well that you can use. I will try to include the repositories that I use in this video in the video description, so you can copy it and include it in your own repository. When that is completed, you simply click OK here. You go into Resources again, Updates, and you choose Check for Updates, and then you restart PixInsight to install all of the updates, and then you are ready to go. The icons that I use to the right here, they are actually copies or shortcuts to a process, but they also include the settings. So for example, if I want to use a process, let's say BlurXTerminator here, and if I want some special settings, let's say I don't want default settings for sharpen, I want to have that lower, I can then take this little triangle, which is the instance that I have, and I can drag it to my screen, and I can rename it to whatever I want, but you can't use spaces and dashes, so BXT settings, for example. And if I were to open this now, it will include the settings that I have chosen for it. I can always reset them to the default, but if I open this again, it will revert back to the settings that I have. And I find this very useful when working in PixInsight, because it will save me a lot of time to have the settings that I want to have default before starting working on that step in my processing workflow. Like I said in the beginning, I'm not going to cover image calibration, and I'm just quickly going through my image selection and integration process. But one nice thing is that I've chosen an object that I did at the same time of the last processing videos. And that is the California Nebula, and what's interesting with this is that we can then in the end compare my original image using the workflow in the old videos with the image that we are producing today with the updated processes and workflow. I'm not adding any data whatsoever. I'm taking the light frames that I took 2022 here, and we are going to go through the image selection process for that. I use the SubframeSelector. I have a screen now that it's not visible yet. It popped up on my other screen. It has some values that are not valid for this project. It's just an old version. I'm going to add my files here. And I actually gathered this data back in 2022, 11/16 to be exact. I have my folder here. I used -10 degrees and 300 second exposures. And I haven't kept anything other than the calibrated light frames. I'm going to include the filters separately in this process now. I'm starting with the HA here. It's not a massive amount of light frames for this object. I have in total, let's see now, 7.3 hours if we don't exclude anything in this process. And that's basically 2.3, 2.5 hours per filter. So I've included all of my light frames here. I've entered my subframe scale, arc seconds per pixels for my camera, and the gain that I've used. This information can be found in the fits header. It's also explained more in detail in my previous video that I've linked to. But it's important to have these correctly set. And I do want to run the measurement right now. I don't want to output anything. As for these settings, I leave most of them at default, but I think I also covered a little bit about this in my previous video. So I'm going to execute this now. It will take some time depending on your computer. Mine is fairly fast now. You can also expand and look at measurement graphs if you want to. I normally never do that. I keep to the numbers. So what is important here? The FWHM, I want that. The eccentricity, how round stars are. How many stars are in the image? That is my main focus here. I want to sort this by FWHM in ascending mode. I want to enter some approval parameters here. Let's say that I want my FWHM to be below 5.5 and my eccentricity also below 0.65 or something in that vicinity. I'm also using a weighting formula here. I will include that as well. It is also included in my specific video that I have linked below. What this does here is that you can see in the output files down here, I have a keyword called ssWeight. So it will actually include this weighting with a keyword called ssWeight into the fits header of my files, and then I can use that as my priority when integrating the light frames here. That helps a lot because it will actually use the best ones with a higher priority. But we can see here, just from looking at the data that I have, that it is pretty good. The FWHM is much lower than the actual limit here. The eccentricity the same. There's no star that it is bloated or have a problem with or whatever. So what I want to do now as well is that I want to keep track of the reference image for each filter here. So in this case I want the frame with the highest amount of stars. In this case it is the this one 0016. So I'm actually typing in 0016 in a small document that I have just to keep track of that it is this file that it is my reference file for integrating. And when that is done, I'm going to go over to SubframeSelector again. I'm going to choose Output Subframe, and I'm going to select a directory here. And I've created a project file, and I have a folder called Light Frames Approved. I will select that, and then I will run this. When that is completed, I will check to see my folder here. You can see that it adds some extensions to the file here. So this file is an HA. It has been calibrated since you have the small c here, and it has been approved since you have the small a here. Those are prerequisites for moving forward. We're going to clear this. We're going to proceed with this for the other filters. So I'm going to select my O3 here. Going to switch back to measure, and then I'm going to execute this again. 30 frames. I had 28 for HA. I'm going to look at the stars first. We can see that all have been approved. The FWHM is fine. The stars are nice and round, and the reference file here is 0024. And it has 2854 stars. It's good to note those things as well, because you will need to also select a general reference file for integrating. I will repeat output subframes. I will keep it in the same folder and execute this again. We'll clear this, and for the final I will add my S2 files here. Let's check, I have 30 files. Change it back to measurement and execute it. So everyone is approved here as well, all of the images, and we can see that the reference is 0013, and we have 3,373 visible stars on that one. So we might select that to be our master reference. I will select output here and run through this as well. We are going to register the light frames. I'm going to select the master reference here. So then I will have to go to my project folder. There's a lot of folders here now, so you have to keep them organized. You're going to go into your approved folder, and we will select our H2 0013, S2, because that one had the most stars in it, 0013. Now we've selected that as a reference image for StarAlignment now, and that was just because there were the most stars visible in this image. We also want to have generate drizzle data selected here, because we are going to drizzle these images. We're going to double the resolution on them as a next step after we have made the first integration here. I'm going to select an output folder, light frames registered for this. It will put an R as a postfix here. And then I will add all of my approved light frames here. It should be, let's see, 28, 30, 30. So 88 light frames, that is the correct amount. And then I will click on execute. It will run through and it will register and align all of these images with each other. It is time to integrate the light frames. This will be done for each filter separately. We are going to select our registered files, starting with HA here, and make sure that I have all. I will add the drizzle files created by the StarAlignment process in the previous step. Now I'm not going to go into that many details about drizzling and drizzle integration and dithering, but if you want to know more, check out my video on dithering and drizzling. That is basically when you have the mount between each 5-minute frame move a certain amount of pixels in order to reduce noise in the images when stacking them together. So add your light frames, add your drizzle files, look at the reference frame that we are going to use. In my case, I made a note of number 16 here. I will select it and click Set Reference. If you want to know more about these settings, check out my video with those details. Make sure that you have weighting to fits keyword and that it has the same keyword that you used in the SubframeSelector process here. When that is completed, you will click execute and it will run through. We will remove these and we will check the integration here with a screen transfer. You can see that we have some nice data here. I will keep this. I will name it HA master, HA, not HD. I will change that to master HA, and I will save it as. I usually have a project folder, I have a processing folder, I have a linear folder and a non-linear folder and a final folder. So in the processing or in the project, I will save my master HA here first. I will close that because we are going to use the drizzled one later, but I will clear this. I will add the rest of the filters, but separately. So 03 here, 30 images. I will add the drizzle files for 03. Make sure that all lines have a D for drizzle. And I will select my reference, which is 0024. Set reference. And then I will click on execute. It will run through the image integration of these light frames as well. Yes, you can see that it is updating the drizzle files here that we are going to use. I will just check with a screen transfer here. You can see that we do have some annoying halos on this 03, but we will fix that. So master 03. I will save that in the same folder. We'll clear this once again. Make sure that I'm still in the registered folder when selecting my light frames. I have 30. I will add my third package of drizzle files. Everyone has a drizzle file. I will select my reference and it is 0013 for this image. So 13, set reference. And I will execute the third filter here, the S2 filter. What we're going to do later is that we are going to use the process called DrizzleIntegration. So you actually do 3 integrated master files here, but you're not going to use these. So I didn't really need to save them if I don't want to, but I will do anyway. Master S2, save as master S2. I will close this and close image integration, and I will open up DrizzleIntegration. Now it is also explained in my drizzle and dithering video. I use a scale of 2. You can use 1.5 or whatever you would like. But what we do now is that we are going to select the drizzle files, and those are in the registered folder here. So I'm going to go into the light frames registered. I'm going to select my HA. This will have to be done for all of the filters once more, but you don't really have to do anything else other than selecting all of the drizzle files, and then you will just click on execute here, and now it will parse through all of the drizzle files here. As you can see here, it takes a little while longer than the first integration, I would say. We have our drizzle integration here. I will make a screen transfer function. You can see now that we have increased the resolution here. It's 8288 by 5644. So I will set this to master HA drizzle and save that. will clear this, and I will do the exact same thing for the other two filters here, creating our final images that we are going to use in our processing later on. And we have our O3 here. Let's stretch that. There's not a super lot of O3 data here, but it's still master O3. Drizzle, and we're going to save that. And we are adding the final light frames for S2, executing that as well. And that is finished. We are going to screen transfer function that as well. Looks nice. Master S2 drizzle. And save that. Now we can actually start the processing of these. So I'm going to open up the 3 drizzled master light frames here, my HA, my O3, and my S2. Now the first step is that I want to do a dynamic crop, because you might have some stacking artifacts here. You want to take care of that. So you can see in this corner that we have some stacking artifacts. This black area here, and we don't want that. But we also need to be careful of using the exact same cropping for all of the images here, because if we don't use that, then we are in trouble, I would say. You can see that we have stacking artifacts up here as well. This area, this is not good. This area is the normal background, the stars, and this area lacks information, so we don't want to include that. So whichever is worst, maybe I will go with this O3 as my template. I will open up my dynamic crop tool process. You can find that under processes, all processes, and dynamic crop as well if you want up here. And what I do now is that I will position this at the edge here, just inside the one changing the size of the window, so I can drag the borders of the image inside a little bit, depending on how much you want to remove from your image there to make it nice. You don't want to remove too much, you don't want to remove too little, so that you will have stacking artifacts on the edges of your image. So how do we do this for each image identically? Well, there are a few ways, or a couple of ways. You can make a copy of this instance if you want to. You can take the triangle, drag it here, and it will save the parameters of this. But if you don't need to reuse it, you can just take this triangle and drag it onto the other image. Let's say the HA here. So I drag it onto there. You can see that it cropped that image. I will take my S2, I will drag the triangle onto there, and it cropped that. And then I will simply accept the cropping for this one. And now all 3 images have been identically cropped. What I do next is I look at the rotation, the geometrics of the image. I could use it like this, but to better be able to compare it to the old image, which I had in another rotation, I will rotate this as well. So in this step, you can rotate the image using the image menu, geometry, and rotate. And then you can rotate however you want. In this case, 180 degrees. I will do that for all of these images. And the final one, my HA image as well. And then I will save these images. So I usually have a naming standard for the linear process and then the non-linear processes. So I start with the name of the filter, and then I just include some kind of keyword as to what I've done. In this case, I've done the dynamic crop and the rotational steps here. So I will save as, go into processing and go into my linear folder, call this HA dynamic crop. And I will do the same thing here. I will save a copy of that as well in that folder. Just in case, you know, I want to go back. You can always go back and forth in PixInsight, but I like to save an actual image of all of the steps, so I can go back, load an image, and start over for every single step. Now we do need to make some dynamic background extraction or some other way of trying to separate the background here from the actual nebulosity and the stars. Now there are a few ways. You can use the automatic background extraction, or you can use the dynamic background extraction included in PixInsight. You also have some tools called gradient correction. Now this is a process you can find under processes and gradient correction. It is also included if you add the repositories that I have. I think this is normally used if you have a lot of light pollution. Let's say you're taking images from a Bortle 7, 8 or 9 area. I'm taking these from a Bortle 4, so I'm not so bothered by light pollution. Maybe there's a more need also if you're shooting broadband. In my case now I'm shooting narrowband, so that is not really needed. But if you have images like this where you have an exact or a defined nebulosity, I would say, in one part of the image, and an area outside of the image that is not including nebulosity, I think automatic or dynamic background extraction is something that you can use. Now there are different ways of doing this. You can make and you can generate samples that are automatically included in the image here, and then you can move these samples around. I found that to be a little bit tedious because you will have samples on areas that maybe are nebulosity. Well, in this case, if you enter a tolerance value here and size of a sample, for example, it will try to avoid areas that are actually nebulosity or stars. You have to play around with the tolerance value here, but you can set for like an 8 sample radius and 12s per row, and then you click on this generate and you will get samples. But then you will have to make sure that the samples aren't actually hitting any nebulosity that you want to keep. So this one here, I don't want to have that. I want to remove that. You can also see when zoomed in now that the stars aren't perfectly shaped here. It was in the beginning of my astrophotography career here, so they are not great, but you will have to just be aware of that. I will remove some of the samples that I think are in nebulosity and not in background, so to speak. I will move them out. I don't want to lose any data here, so I will drag them down here. You can also see in the window to the right here, if I place them on a star here, it will be completely black. So keep them away from stars. Work your way through the image here, making sure that you stay away from nebulosity and stars. And that looks good, maybe. And I will go to the other side here and do the same thing. Just take these out a bit further away from nebulosity here. Making sure that they are not in anything that I want to keep that is confused with background. So drag this out. I will take this one up here as well. Now this is a dynamic process, so it will be directly linked to the image that you are doing right now. That's why we have to do exactly like we did with dynamic crop. We have to save an instance of this now, so we will be able to reuse it on the other light frames, because it won't be easily reused if you you can't reuse the settings, so to speak, for several images if you don't save this process in its entirety. Maybe something like this. We have some small adjustments here. You can do this in iterations, if you will, as well. You might think that you never want, you won't ever be ready for this, but when you feel somewhat finished with this image, you will take this triangle and you will create a copy of this instance here. So we will execute this on my HA frame. It will remove the background here and it will create a new copy that I will stretch with screen transfer function here, and you can compare that to the other image. We will cancel that. We will make this window a bit smaller. You can see that the left one here is without dynamic background and the right one is with dynamic background, and it has made it a bit more contrast between the background and the nebulosity. So the identifier here is set to _dbe. So I will save a copy of that in my linear steps, and I will close the original one. I will do the same for my 03 here. I will open up a copy of this and it will copy all of the points or samples here, but you can see that it differs a little bit for O3. Now we have most of the O3 nebulosity here, so you might want to double check, and you might want to move some of these samples, even though you think that most are fine. I will take a few of these samples and I will move them to other locations just to make sure that I don't really remove anything that I want to keep here. This should be fine. Then I will execute it on my O3. Will close my background. I will make this smaller and I will stretch this. It looks like it's stretching automatically, but I'm actually using the shortcut Control A. You have screen stretch up here as well, and you can open up the screen transfer function if you want to, of course, as well, to do this. So I will adjust the identifier and I will save this as well. We'll close the original one and I will keep that. And now I will do the exact same thing for the third image. Now the S2 is more concentrated like the HA, so I don't have to do anything here other than executing this process. We'll close this and we will compare the two here to see what the stretched one will look like. A little bit better. And set the identifier and save a file there. Close the original one. So now we have our 3 SHO. We will close that. We have done now the first dynamic crop. We have done some rotation on the light frames. We have done the dynamic background extraction on the file here. If you still notice anything that you want to adjust, you can try the gradient correction, for example, here. But I normally don't use that if I don't have a visually noticeable problem. We can try and execute it on the O3 here, just to see if there's any difference. I didn't really notice. Just a slight little thing. So I'm not going to use gradient correction for these frames here. The next step here is to use the LinearFit process that you can find up here as well. LinearFit. I will use a setting of reject low and reject high. That is basically the default settings. What this tool does is that it will adjust the brightness among the 3 light frames. Now this is for the integration of the 3 later on, so it will have the same brightness levels. I normally use my HA as the reference here, so I will select my HA. You need to have all of these 3 open. And then I basically will open the other ones and I will drag this triangle onto the light frame here. So now it will linearly fit. I don't know if that is even a word, but it will fit. It will adjust the brightness levels here of this image to the HA. It looks kind of funny now. We are going to remove the screen transfer function with F12 and apply it with Control A again. And now you can see that it looks better. I will change the identifier to LinearFit LF here, and I will save a copy of this one so I know that it has been fixed. I will also do the same here, drag it onto my O3. It will go through a linear fit on that, remove the stretching, the screen stretching, and apply it again. Set this. It may look tedious here. You're going to see a lot of saving of files during these tutorial videos that I have, but like I said, I like to keep a version of all three. So I've not actually done anything to the HA because it has been used as the reference, but just to be sure that this step has been completed for all three, I will save a file and change the identifier of this as well. Now we're moving into the next steps of the linear processing, and if you have watched my old videos, you can see that we used the deconvolution feature in PixInsight, but that was a very tedious and complex tool and process to use, and the results were hard to get. I would say it would take a long time, but now we have tools like BlurXTerminator from RC Astro, and I really like this tool. It will definitely improve your images if they are slightly out of shape stars, or it will basically take your medium priced or budget priced telescope and bump it up a step in the food chain without even having to buy a new telescope. You should use this early in the process, and I will run this for all three of my images right now. I will start with my HA. I used the default settings on my BlurXTerminator, and you can also use hardware acceleration for this. I have a video of me building a computer for PixInsight processing, and also a video of me explaining on how you install and keep the hardware acceleration with your graphics card working for these steps. This will actually make the stars smaller, more precise, and it would also adjust and sharpen non-stellar objects like the nebulosity here. So without doing anything else right now, I will take the triangle here and I will drag it onto this image to start the processing of BlurXTerminator. And you can see that the result is very, very nice here. You can, if we step back, this is before and this is after. You will see a dramatic change in the stars here overall. Even this bright star here. We don't actually have a big halo on HA here, but we might have that on the other one. So I will save this as BlurXTerminator. You can also run this in batch processing. I have a video on using image container and process containers if you have a lot of images that you need to run this on, but right now we are not doing that. So we're taking the S2 here. I'm checking to see that if I have a small halo on this one. So if we have halos, when running BlurXTerminator, you can try and adjust this value here for star halos. And you can drag this down to 0.10 or 15 or something like that, just to try to take care of those halos a little bit. And I will run this now on my S2. Don't adjust that halo setting if you don't have any halos. That has completed. I will save that BlurXTerminator. And the O3. On this one you can see that we have a big halo problem here, so we definitely want to have the halo settings on this BlurXTerminator. I will also try to remove some of these halos before moving forward. We are going to do the stars a bit differently in this processing tutorial than I did in the old one. I extracted the stars in the non-linear phase in those videos, but in this video I will extract the stars in the linear phase, and that way we have a much more control over stretching the stars individually. That will give us an opportunity not to include the worst part of the halos. So we'll save this as well then. Call it BlurXTerminator. Now the next step would be normally to run NoiseXTerminator on all of the 3 frames, but like I said, we had some halos on the S2 here. It is not completely visible, but still we have a little bit of halos here that we want to address. Now I have a separate video on this describing the details much more thoroughly, so we are not going to go too deep into this step, but we are going to cover it, of course. Now in order to adjust the halo here, we want to decrease the midtones of this area around the star. How do we do that? Well, we use a mask. How do we produce a mask around a single star? There is a script called the game script located under script and utilities. With that you can make a circular or ellipse type of mask. What we need to do here is we need to select out to STF to be able to see what we are doing. We are also going to deselect a gradient mask and select a binary mask, because that will be a black and white mask. We will add a shape here. It will just add a random shape. We will drag it down here, and then we will try to zoom in on this area so we will see what we are doing when we are creating this mask. We will try, this is not centered. You can see that the halo is not actually centered onto the star here, so it will be a bit hard to maybe adjust this perfectly, but we will try to make a mask that fits over the halo area, maybe something like that. We'll click OK here, and the script here will create the mask that will cover the halo area. But if we use it in this configuration, black and white here, it will be very sharp, and you would see all of the changes. So that's why we have to run a bit of convolution on it. And I actually have a setting for this. Now you can open up this process under processes, all, and then convolution. And you can set the configuration values that I have on my screen here. And if you execute that on this mask, you will see that it takes care of the sharp edges here. So what we do next is that we apply this mask to this image. And if you're not familiar with how masks works in PixInsight here, you simply just take this little tab here, you drag it onto an area which is free. If you drag it onto the other tab, you actually replicate the view settings. If you zoomed in on this one and you want to have the exact same zoom and positioning on the other one, you can just drag this onto the other tab. But if you want to use this as a mask and apply it to the image, you drag it onto an area which is free here. So like this. We will minimize this for now. You can see that the mask is applied now and it is red, and this is exactly how we want it. We want everything but the halo area protected. If we were to want to adjust the background and protect the foreground, so to speak, we could invert the mask up here. You can see that then we are protecting this area, but we don't want that now, and we also want to see what we are doing. So we're going to click on Show Mask, and that will remove the mask from the view, but the mask is still applied. You can see that because it is orange-red in the background here. We are going to open up a histogram transformation under processes as well. And with that tool, we are going to select our view, which is our S2. And don't confuse it with the mask we just did now. That's called bin for binary mask. So select the original here. And before we do any adjustments, we would want to open up a real-time preview window. And in this real-time preview window, maybe you want to zoom in to be able to really see what you are doing here. So you can click this little preview icon like this, and then you are zoomed into the area that we are going to be adjusting. So when I said earlier that we're going to adjust the midtones, that means the middle lever here in the histogram transformation tool. That is adjusting the midtones of the histogram. So if you click that and hold the left button and drag it to left or right, you can see that you're adjusting the midtones. Now you can reset it because it's very sensitive. You don't want to drag it too much, because then you will end up with black lines around here, and you don't want to adjust it too little. So you basically want to adjust it just enough to not be able to see the brighter part of the halo here. So I'm going to take this and drag it down. To the right, while making sure that the area completely outside the star doesn't get darker than the background here. So I think that's good. I will apply that. And if we look at the image here, we can close this preview, and if we look at the image here and then we click back and forth, you can see that we basically took care of that halo. So we're actually done. This took just one step. I will remove the mask here, and I will name this halo here, and I will save it as halo so that I know that I have adjusted the halo on this one. For HA, I didn't really need to. Well, there's a slight halo here. We might as well do it while we are here. Let's see if we can use the same mask here, because it might be okay. Normally it's not, so we will try with the histogram transformation here. We will select our HA, make a preview, zoom into this area, adjust it a little bit. You can see that it is a little bit smaller, but I think it actually works quite okay. It won't be noticeable later on. So we have applied that, and we will zoom out and look at before and after. I think that's a very good result. We will remove the mask. We call this halo as well, and we will save it with the other files. Now for the problem child. I have inexpensive filters that causes problems like these, like you can see here. For that we are going to be able to, or we are going to be forced to make separate masks. We won't have a great result on this one. This halo is too big, but we will try. So we will remove that old mask. We will start the game script again from the utilities. We will load the AutoSTF here, and we will choose the binary mask, add. We will start with this one up here, I think, and zoom into that. And we will add mask around this halo as good as we can. Clicking OK. Applying our convolution to it. Applying our mask here. We will remove this mask, or we will not show it. And we will select our O3 again, and preview, and zoom in. Here you can see that we have a problem. If we do it too much, we will have some black around it. So you can do this in increments. If you really are interested in a perfect result, well, you can't have a perfect result, but if you really want to spend time on it, you can do a bigger mask, and then a little bit smaller mask, and then a smaller mask, and then you can work in iterations until you're done. I will just make this a little bit darker, like that. Keep in mind that this will also be integrated later on, so some of the halos will be, removed. So I don't think that this is going to be posing as such a big problem, because when we run StarXTerminator later on, it will also remove some of this. I'm going to let this be now and try to focus on that problem child. We'll start a new game script. Binary again. And we're gonna go down here. This is a much bigger problem, as you can see. You have layers and layers, and you have a darker line in here. That, of course, is going to be affected if we try to darken this entire area. But I don't see that we have a choice. We will fix this a little bit and then hope for StarXTerminator when we run that process to take care of the rest. Do a little bit of convolution on it. Apply that to our image. Open up our histogram, select our O3, select our star with a preview here, and then try to adjust this a little bit. You can see that when we drag this down, this area will darken and this area will stay lighter. So don't drag this area down any further than the background here. We will have to try to work with this circle in some other way, I would say. So take this down, but not too far down. Apply that. And yeah, you can try and work with that circle if you want to. And you can also use the clone stamp here, I would say. You can try to clone stamp this away. Let's say, for the sake of argument here, that we try that now. We will open up the clone stamp process, but I don't think that will work because you don't have a clear, if we had this much space between the star and the actual halo circle, I think we would have more to work with. Now we're having a problem here that will be hard to solve. So you could use a clone stamp here and try to remove any traces of this. I would say now we will try and run StarXTerminator and see how it handles this before we do anything else. So I'm going to remove that mask now, and I'm going to call this Halo. And I will save it as Halo. Can remove my masks if I don't feel like I need to use them again. So we've done halo removal. Now we're going to run through NoiseXTerminator, and I also use that with the default settings for the noise and detail. I'm just going to run it through all of my filters here, starting with my S2. Now these can produce some funny results with the screen transfer function. So after this step, if you remove and add the screen transfer function, it might look seriously funny. That's why I don't really remove and screen transfer function again after NoiseXTerminator. I just run it on my files. I run StarXTerminator later on, and then I stretch the image into the nonlinear stage. But if I were to just apply a screen transfer function and look at it, it will sometimes look very funny. And my O3. We will of course do some noise handling later on in the nonlinear steps as well. This is just to prepare these files here. So the next step here, and the second to last step in the linear phase, is to run StarXTerminator. Now I usually did this in the nonlinear phase before, but it is recommended from the manufacturer, the programmer, that you run this as early as possible in the linear phase, and then that you stretch stars and starless images separately. So if you want to now, you can use a process batching. I don't want on-screen stars because if you use that in a linear phase here, it says that on-screen is not recommended for linear unstretched images. So we're going to uncheck that. I'm going to close these and I'm going to select the process batch. So I want my starless files to be outputted to my linear. I want my stars to be outputted to linear as well. And I don't want on-screen stars, but I want to have star images generated because I would need to stretch those images and put those together later on to make my stars for this as well. So I'm going to select input files here now. And I'm going to go into my linear folder, and now you can see that I have all of my files here that I've been processing and working on. So I will select the last image from all 3 of my frames filters. So HA and O3 and S2. And I would like to process 3 files, and it will create starless and star images in that folder that I have specified. The StarXTerminator has finished now. We're going to go into the folder. Now you can see that we have a starless and stars version of all 3 frames. Now these are of course in the linear state or phase still, and they will have to be stretched. That is the final step before we can take it into the non-linear processing. Now I'm going to start with the stars here, so I will open up the 3 star files. But we are going to stretch it, and now you can use a number of different tools to stretch these images. So the most basic one is that you can use the histogram transformation tool if you want to. Let me just make a copy of this one. You can always make a copy of a file by just taking this tab here and dragging it onto an empty area on the workspace here. We will select the O3 clone here. I will reset this and make sure it's reset. We can now stretch this with the histogram transformation tool if you want to. You see, you have this little histogram. It's way out here to the far left. And we want to reveal all of the data that it is inside of this histogram curve. So we want to get it a bit further in to the right here, I would say. So we're going to take this middle lever here. We're going to drag it down to here, but not so far so we will clip or cut any of the data that is visible here. So in a histogram curve, you have black to the far left and white to the far right here. So after you drag this lever, you can apply it. You will then reset the tool, and you can repeat the stretch again, apply it again, reset the tool again, and you can repeat that a couple of times. Every time you see that more and more information will start appearing on the screen here. Now this is just our stars. So you can decide on where you want to stop here. How much of the stars do you want to have visible? Oh, this is a bit too much. Now we're going to go back. That's one tool that you can use. There are some better tools today that are, or I would say have a lot more features. For example, the generalized hyperbolic stretch tools. Now, this is much more complicated. It took me a while before I got the hang of it, and I'm still not so good at it. But I want to include this in my video guide before the histogram transformation tool now, because that tool will only stretch with a straight curve like this, while the generalized hyperbolic stretch can set symmetry points and then stretch like a curve. You can see here that we have set a symmetry point here. We are going to protect the data that is visibly here, and then we will do a stretch that can be shaped like a curve, stretching more in this section and stretch nothing here and nothing here. And then we can play around with a lot of different features, but we will go into that a bit deeper when we're going to stretch the starless versions. For now, we're just going to stretch the stars, so we don't really need to pay too much attention to this. So we're not going to set a symmetry point. I'm going to explain that later on. For now, when we are going to stretch the stars, we are just going to set the local intensity here. This controls how focused the stretch is going to be. The higher the number here, the less focused it's going to be. So we're going to set this to the maximum local intensity, 15. Then we're going to stretch this until we're satisfied with how the stars look, and then we're going to copy that stretch over, so we will have the complete same stretch on all of the star frames here. Now we can have a preview window. I would suggest that, otherwise it will be very hard. And then we just take the lever here and we stretch it until you're satisfied with the stars. You can see that you can go way up here. Now we're starting to look really, really bad. And you probably don't want that. You can also control here how much is going to be visible for those annoying halos, for example. We can zoom in here and we can determine where the halo is actually visible. Like it's going to start to be very bad here. So we don't want any of these things being visible on our stars, of course. That stretch is too aggressive. But we don't want to eliminate all of the stars as well. We want to have stars. We can always decrease the amount of stars later on. So I'm fairly happy with this. Local intensity 15, and we stretch it to 5.7 here as our stretch factor. And keep in mind that you should start with the light frame that is the brightest stars. So O3 is a good place to start with. So when we have the settings that we want, we will take it first to the other frames, starting with this one, the HA. So I'm not touching anything here now. I'm just taking the triangle, dragging this, and we have the HA star stretched here. I'm taking the S2 here, dragging the stretch up here, and we're taking the O3 and we're dragging the stretch up to the O3 here, and then we can close it. And now we have the stretched stars for all three. So here we're going to now name it HA stars, and we're going to save that into the nonlinear folder because it is a non-linear now. And we will pick this up later when we are going to go into processing in the nonlinear. That is the next video. So S2 stars. And we're going to save that as well in the nonlinear. S2 stars. Maybe we will place S up here, so it will be SHO. We like to keep things nice and tidy here. Well, in my home anyway. 03 stars. Now we have all of the stars. We will combine those later on. Well, we are going to continue on now with the starless images. This is a bit more complicated. You can't really just take one and copy it over to the others. You will have to stretch everyone individually until you are satisfied with the result here. So let me explain a little bit more about the generalized hyperbolic stretch now. There are a lot of videos. There are other tools now that you can use as well. Something that has come up recently is the SETI Astro statistical stretch script that actually look at the statistics of the image and perform what we would call, you know, the initial stretch of the image. It looks promising. I don't think maybe it is complete. Maybe it can be compared more to the histogram transformation tool stretch in terms of stretching with a straight curve here. But like we said earlier, in the generalized hyperbolic stretch, you have black all the way to the left, white all the way to the right. You can't see anything now just because all of your data is actually right here at the end. So if we zoom in here, if we click on the plus here, you can see that, oh, here is our data and it is spread out here. And all the way out here, we don't have any data whatsoever. And we want to stretch this out, revealing information that we have in here, of course. That is the primary objective. And the way these tools work is that we can use the generalized hyperbolic stretch mode, and we can also use the linear stretch mode if we want to do some initial stretching, or to reset the black point, for example, which we might do later on. We have the stretch factor, like I said. We have the local intensity here, and that controls the slope of the curve, how much is going to be stretched. We have the symmetry point here, and that is the point of focus around which stretching is going to be occurring. We're actually not stretching anything on the exact symmetry point. Then you have two protective curves, or protective settings, I would say, that you can protect shadows to make sure you're not clipping out anything from the darker areas. And you have protect highlight here. You can drag that in also to make sure that you are not blowing out or clipping any areas that are white. You don't want to remove anything. And if you feel like you want to make smaller adjustments, then you can using this lever here. You have also fine adjustments when you're going into details. If we zoom out, you can also adjust things by using these levers here, but that just depends on how you want to work. So we're going to start with our HA here. It's not screen stretched right now. We're going to set our symmetry point from around which we are going to be stretching. We can first check to see that the histogram here is not too far into the right area here. If it is, you may want to change this to linear and then adjust the black point here with this lever or with this lever. So you adjust the black point to be a bit closer to the histogram peak without clipping any data, but that's just if it is located further into the right here. So for us, for this, we don't need to change anything. And there are different schools here now of doing stretching in the first phase of this. What we can all agree on is that the symmetry point here should be set somewhere around the peak of the histogram. Some say on the peak, some say right to the right of the peak, and most people, I would say somewhere to the left of the peak here. So we can click here in this window. We have now marked some zone. You can also click inside. If you have a preview open, you can click inside the image to set this symmetry point. What you would have to do before we do anything else is that you will have to click send to symmetry point here. That will take this value of where you have selected and send it down to the symmetry point setting here. Now, like I said, there are different schools here now on how to proceed. I've had some discussions with friends of mine, and I've looked at a lot of videos, and people do this very differently. Some will make, you know, a big initial stretch. Like they will take the stretch factor here and they will drag it all the way, or, you know, further away here, and maybe place it somewhere around here or something. Everything looks fine when you're doing that, but you can see that a lot of data has been clipped now because the curve is really steep and going up here, and you really want to be careful with doing stretches like this. So I would agree with my friend here that that kind of stretching is maybe not the best way. So he just advised me to, in the beginning, go by the shape of the curve here. Make it a subtle stretch. Then you can repeat that stretch 1 time, 2 times, 8 times until you slowly try to reveal data without clipping anything. And then you go into specific stretching of areas with different brightness or darkness and adjust things until you're satisfied. And I tend to agree with him. So for the first part here, I will just drag this curve up to something like this. A very, very gentle curve. Nothing extreme. I will just execute this. Nothing really happens on the image because that was just a small first stretch. I will repeat this a few times. After the second, you start to see something here. I will stretch it again like that. Then I will stretch it again. And I will repeat these initial stretching steps until I would say I will reach about 20% of the histogram here. Well, you have to look at it, I would say. You have to decide for yourself if you want to half this stretch factor now and going forward, because, well, 25% of the histogram is here. 12.5% is here, so 20% is maybe up here somewhere. Maybe I will stretch this one more time. And then it was too much, so I will undo that. I will decrease the stretch factor of that stretch, and maybe apply 2 more stretches until I reach somewhere around here. Maybe I will decrease this stretch and run 1 more. That was a little bit too much, so now I'm somewhere around 20% of the histogram here. So now I can reset this tool. Now you can see that the image has been initially stretched. I can see all my beautiful HA data here, even though this is only 2.3 hours worth of data. And for, basically the first astrophotography session that I had whatsoever, I think it's fairly good data. What we can do next now is we can select a faint area. You could at this point also adjust the black point, but I will wait with this a little bit. I want to make sure that I have all of the faint details. So I can click here in the image. You can see that if I click here, I will select a bright area. I will be moved all the way over here until I'm starting to come into the right area of the histogram. If I select a black area here, I will come into the far left region of the histogram. I will select a dim area. I want to make sure that I have this area here, or this type of dim features. So I'm clicking on that. That will get me a new symmetry point. I will send that to SP. I will set my local intensity fairly low, 0.370, 350, something like that. I don't want to be extreme here. I want to have a small stretch. Then I will adjust the stretch factor, keeping in mind the brighter areas here that might be needed to be protected. So I will stretch this until I get a nice curve like before. Nothing extreme here, just a nice fairly clean stretch. I don't have any areas that are blown out. If I click on white areas here, I can see the values of those. So here I can see that I have 0.748168. If it's 0.9, 0.95, you're starting to be very close to being blown out. So something like that is nice. I'm going to apply that. Going to reset the tool. Now I made a stretch for that area. I'm fairly happy with how that turned out. If I want to adjust the black point at this time, I can switch it to linear mode here. Then I can just drag the black point here to the left a little bit. Nothing much, but maybe a little bit like that. I will apply that. I will go back to generalized hyperbolic stretch and I will continue. What do I want to stretch now? Maybe some mid-tones, maybe this. A little bit of brighter area. I want to stretch that to reveal. Maybe have some nicer contrast between those. So I will select this area maybe. Send that to symmetry point, and the same, a very gentle local intensity here, and then I can increase the stretch factor here. You can see that now we're keeping the brighter areas here, but that's actually increasing the contrast. We have a slight S-curve now, barely visible, but we have a slight S-curve. I might want to increase that a little bit, but I don't want to blow out anything, so I can always use protect highlights here if I want to just bring this down a little bit, making sure that I don't clip any data there. So yeah, this looks nice. We'll apply that. Then I will keep adjusting. Maybe now I can feel that, well, these areas, I don't want to lose them, so I might want to take this area, send that to symmetry point, set the local intensity a little bit, and stretch. Here you have to be careful for don't blowing out this. So protect highlights you need to have on here, absolutely. And then you play with this stretching until you think that it is fine. It's not blown out here. That's the main thing, I would say. That's not blowing out any details. So we'll apply that, reset the tool. We can go into linear again. We can adjust the black point a little bit again, like this. And you can see that we have a lot of nice details in this H alpha flowing here. We still have a lot of details here. We can zoom into this area. We see that I have a lot of details. We will work on the contrast here between these areas later on, of course, then also, but yeah, if we feel like we want to do some more adjusting, we can select another highlighted area. For example, we want to have even more contrast here. We'll try that again. Don't want it too much or barely anything, so I'm just working my way with just a little bit of contrast, increasing things. I'm dragging this protection down to make sure that I'm not blowing out anything here. I'll apply that. I want to make sure that I don't lose this faint thing here. I'm gonna adjust that also just a little bit. Here we will have to protect the highlights again. I'll check the values here to make sure that they don't go up above, let's say 0.95 or something like that. I'll apply that. And I will make a final adjustment of the black point here, because yeah, you want to have a nice black background for this object, because there is a distinct separation between nebulosity and background, I would say. So we have nice areas now. We have some details here. We have some faint details, and I feel fairly happy with this now. You can, of course, play around with this how long you would want, but so this is the stretched here. So I will name this HA starless, and I will save this in my non-linear folder. So I have my HA stars and my HA starless. I will continue with my S2 here. I will reset my tool, make sure that I have my S2 active. I will click on a preview here. I will zoom in. I will check to see where I have my histogram, and I will place my symmetry point here. And like the last time, I won't select anything in the local intensity here. And I will zoom out again, and I will make a stretch that is fairly gentle in the curve. I will then execute a few stretches like this until I start to reveal my data here. Now you can see that there is actually a very big halo here around the S2 that I didn't even realize that I had earlier. So you could, if you would want to, you could try to remove that, but this is a nice, maybe. The first stretch, maybe we will do one more, but we will make it half of this intensity, something like that. That's a first good stretch here. We want to reveal a lot of information here, so we do like we did last time. We will select a little bit of a faint area here. We'll send that to symmetry point. We will set a local intensity that is fairly low here, and then we will try to stretch this out here a little bit like this. Nice curve. Reset this tool again. We will select a little bit of a darker area here, maybe. Send that to symmetry point. Well, just to make it a bit better, we will adjust the black point first. So we will switch it to linear. I will adjust the black point a little bit. We'll go back to GHS. I will select a slightly brighter area, but still not super bright. We'll increase this a little bit, and then I will make a stretch here that will increase the contrast of this, and I apply it. I will select a very bright area and do the same thing, just to reveal some information without removing anything. You can use protect black here as well, but when you're stretching this small amounts each time, it's not so important. So we will take a very low light area again here to actually reveal that information. Send that to symmetry point and stretch it again to actually get all of this last bits and pieces of information here that we really want to. We can make sure that we don't have too much here. It's fine so far. Don't need to protect much of the highlighted areas. And now we can see that you actually have a little bit of a halo effect here. You could, in this file now, or in this master data, we could remove all of this to not have it included. I think we will do that later on before we will integrate these together. We will look at the linear again and adjust the black point to get rid of some information there that we don't want. This looks fairly nice, I would say. The quality is not as good as the HA, but it's also a filter question. We can see what we can do here. Some final small adjustments to get this contrast nice. And maybe a final here, and then we'll adjust the black point again. Something like that. We'll see. We'll adjust that just a little bit, and this will be our S2 data, I would say. It is good anyway. So S2 starless. HA is always a joy to work on. S2 can be a joy, often not so enjoyable, and O3 is a total disaster. Anyway, for me with my filters, so we're going to check here to see the O3. Well, it looks like it's a little bit more to the right. We will set a symmetry point here. We will zoom out here, and we will select the stretch factor and try to stretch the same as we have done. You can see that there is not so much O3 data here. It's much harder to get it visible. We also see this halo on the star that we don't want, so we will have to try to handle that in some way. We will try to get, you see that we have data here. It's so faint you can barely see it. We'll select some data here that that we can see, and we will try to see if we can't trick it to actually appearing. We will try a gentle stretch here, and then we will try to protect a little bit also. We'll try to reset the black point here for this data, so we can see if we can't trick some of it to be revealed a little bit better. We will continue to stretch this. You can see that we have data here, but it's very faint. This is only 2.5 hours, so it's not a lot. So we're going to reset the black point here again, a little bit more aggressively this time. Maybe we can reveal some more of this data here. Try to see if we can increase the contrast just a little bit of that data that is visibly here. So we'll do a stretch like this, and we will take a faint area again and try to stretch it a little bit more to see what happens. And then we will adjust the black point again of this O3 data here. Yeah, it's not good. It is what it is here, of this O3. Maybe we will have to make some kind of mask here to adjust the background here a little bit. I will try again to adjust the contrast of this data that is visible. And we will try to adjust the black point again a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe not so much. We can choose now later on if we want to keep this halo thing here or if we want to have that removed altogether, but I don't think I will get much further here with that data. You can see that, well, there's a lot of nice S2 data and a lot of nice HA data here. But in terms of O3 data, there's not so much. So I will save this as a nonlinear O3 starless. That was the final step in this first part of the astrophotography processing in PixInsight, step-by-step linear phase. We have stretched the stars and we have stretched the starless images, the nebulosity, and we will move those over and continue in the next part, which is a non-linear processing part. I'm going to start with combining the stars. I have stretched the stars separately after making a starless and stars version in the linear phase. And now we are going to integrate these three into SHO stars. And after that, we are going to make a synthetic RGB color image. So the stars will be as true to what they actually look like as possible. Now the steps that I'm going to show you are detailed, but I have a completely separate video on making synthetic RGB stars if you would like to look at some of the steps you might need to take before you can proceed. There are some libraries that need to be downloaded in order for this to work properly. The first thing we need to do is to combine these three. I'm using Pixel Math for that. I have prepared a formula already. Normally when you make SHO images, you simply add sulfur 2, hydrogen alpha and oxygen 3 into the different colors or channels here. So sulfur 2 in the red, hydrogen alpha in the green, and oxygen 3 in the blue. But in this case, we want to, emulate the reality as close as possible. And this is a formula that is floating around out there. I've seen others using it in their YouTube videos as well. I'm going to include it in the video description as a documentation, but fairly to say, I'm going to add 0.4 40% of H alpha and 60% of sulfur 2 into the red channel. I'm going to include 40% O3, 30% H alpha and 30% S2 in the green channel. And then I'm simply going to add 100% of O3 in the blue channel. For that to work, you will have to uncheck this use a single RGB expression. You will also have to check create new image and select color space RGB color for this to work. Now, since I don't want to enter this every time, I usually like to save a copy of that. So when you have configured this, take this triangle, drag it out to the desktop here or workspace and save a copy of that and name it to something. So you can open Pixel Math with the formula already entered. You only have to execute it. Now what we need to fix is that the name of the frames here, you see that it is HA here, for example. I'm going to take a copy of these 3 frames here that we will be using in this case, and I will rename them so they can be used by this script. So I don't have to change the script. It's more work to change the script than simply just add 3 frames here and name them correctly. So when you're finished with that, you'll have to click on execute or apply here. So you apply that and you have your SHO stars. You can close these. Now this looks fairly good right off the bat here. Images, or I should say colors, should be fairly accurate, but we're going to make a few steps here. So we're going to call this SHO stars, and we're going to save it as SHO stars. The next step is that we want to color calibrate this using a process called spectrophotometric color calibration. And in order for that to be able to be used, you will need to have the image solved. That means that we need to have data in this image telling us exactly where this is in the night sky. So for that, we can use the script here under script, image analysis and image solver. Now, in order for this to work, you would need some local XPSD servers. You would need to have this Gaia DR3 catalog downloaded. There's actually 2 catalogs that you will need to have downloaded, and you need to have configured this into PixInsight. But since I don't want to spend too much time and I have a separate video on this, you can go to that to be able to look at those steps in detail. But what we would need to do here is that we want to set the right ascension and declination the same as we used when we gathered this data. Now, either you have this in a file that I do, or you can check the fits header of a light frame that you gathered when you took this data the first time. It will be in there. So this is not super important, but we will say something in the beginning of 2022. What is important here that you will need to enter your focal distance, and you will need to enter the pixel size, but you will have to take into account your drizzling parameters. So the pixel size for my camera here is 4.63, And this value is actually half that because I used a 2x drizzling when I integrated. That means you will have to half the pixel size here. So now this is very important because if you have anything wrong in these parameters, the image plate solver script and the catalog won't be able to find any information whatsoever. So we have that configured. We're using a local Gaia catalog, and then we are executing this. The image solver has been completed. Now we have an image that includes the information about the stars. We will save this one. We don't have to create a new file because nothing has changed in the image itself yet, just some built-in information about where it is pointing in the night sky. The next step here is to actually adjust the colors. So we will open the spectrophotometric color calibration. This is a mouthful to pronounce, especially from one not speaking English as a native language. So I've also saved some settings here that you will have to adjust. The white reference can stay default. The QE curve will have to be adjusted to the sensor that you are using. I have the ASI 294mm Pro camera, and that has the IMX492 sensor. Other than that, I will only have to check apply color calibration. Make sure that you have the Gaia DR3SP catalog chosen. SP contains the color information of the stars. You will need to download and configure this one. So the same here as before. Check out my video on creating synthetic RGB stars if you don't have this installed or configured and you need help with it. So after this, it's only a matter of dragging this little triangle onto the image here, and it will work through the image, locate the stars, compare it, and adjust colors to the spectrum catalog that we have configured. We can see now that it has adjusted the colors of the stars here to match the reality, and I am very happy with that. So we can close this. I will save this image once more, and as a final step we can adjust the colors a bit more with the script toolbox SelectiveColorCorrection. I really like this script. We can manipulate a lot of different colors here if we want to make them a little bit more vibrant, for example, brighter or more blue. So this script actually also makes masks, so I can say that I want to manipulate blue here and I want to make it a little bit more blue, so I will raise that a little bit. Can't really see that much, but I will want to increase the saturation and contrast a little bit of the blue. I will apply that, and I will then reset the tool, and I will select a red mask here. Now there's no apparent red stars here that are bigger, but I will increase the red a little bit for saturation and contrast. And I will apply that to the image as well. Not any major changes, but just a little bit to make the stars nice here. So I will change that to color, and we will see if we want to maybe decrease the stars a little bit later on when we are going to join the stars here together with the starless. So I finished with these for now. We'll close those. Now that we have finished with the stars, we are moving on to combining the SHO starless images. We're going to take a look at the frames here. We have H alpha, S2 and O3. We are going to attempt to adjust the backgrounds for these. The H alpha doesn't really need any adjusting in the background, so we're going to change the identifier to background. Just to have some kind of order. And then we are going to adjust S2 here, so we are moving up to processes and then clone stamp. We want to remove this little residue, so we're pressing Control here and we're basically just painting over this area. There isn't really anything here worth keeping. So we are just removing it entirely like that. When we finished with that, we will click OK here, and then we will change this identifier to background, and we will save it as background. We will do the same for O3 here, and that this is the worst by far. We don't really want to have this blob here. We don't want to disturb the area too much because, you know, we want to keep it as natural as possible. But we have some O3 data here, and we have some O3 data here, so it's probably so that the data is like this, and this halo effect is just because of the bright star. So I'm thinking that we will select a fairly big radius first, 200 maybe, and I will select this area and see if we can't replicate what is there. So for this, trying to remove it without disturbing too much, I will replicate the area that we have over here. And for this, we will change the size to 125 now. We will paint a little bit from this direction just to remove some of that. And for the sake of this video, I think we will accept that, apply it, change the identifier here to background and save that as well. So now we have 3 starless light frames ready to be integrated. we're going to combine this into an SHO starless version. So we're opening up Pixel Math here, and we are typing in starless, S2 starless background here in the red, the H alpha in the green, and the O3 in the blue here. We need an active window. We're applying that. So this is our integrated SHO. We're going to type in SHO here and save that as SHO. We're going to save it as SHO starless, so we have some kind of order. Now we can remove these 3 icons. The next step is preparing to make some first color adjustments. We will do that using a color script or a color mask. So we will open up the color mask script here, and we will select 4 mask blur layers and cyan mask, because a cyan mask will allow us to modify the blue color of the image. We will open up this one more time with the same settings, so 4 mask blur layers, and select the yellow. That will allow us to adjust the red nuances of this image. Now we need to blur the edges of the masks here, and for that we can use a multiscale linear transformation tool that you can access from the processes as well. But I like to use a dyadic layer approach with 7 layers. You can just copy the parameters that I have here. We apply that to the image, and after some processing, it will have smoothed out the edges of the mask here, making it usable without being so obvious. So that is completed, and we will run this one more time on the cyan one. Now sometimes I don't really use this method of color correction. It just depends on the object that I'm processing, I guess, and the quality of the data as well. Sometimes it's not a good choice. Other methods are preferable. So now we can proceed. We have created the color masks here. We are starting to adjust the colors. We will start running the SCNR. You can find that on the processes. I want to remove green because in the standard or original SHO Hubble palette you don't really have that much green. So I want to remove green with the average neutral protection method, and I will remove 80%. You can play around with this if you want to keep more of the green, and I will run that. Then I will go to image and invert this image and remove 100% of the green in inverted mode, then invert it back. And now we have an SCNR version of SHO starless with the green removed. So that is good news. This looks fairly good, I would say. We can try now to modify the colors. We can add the well, we shouldn't add the yellow mask. We will start with the cyan mask here for blue. So we take the cyan mask and we drag it onto our image here. And we use it as it is, but I will remove show mask here. Then you can open up a curves transformation process. And we will reset this to make sure that it is good to go. We will select blue here since it is the blue areas we want to adjust. You can play around with adding blue to the image here if you want to. You can see that it adds blue on several places, not really intended for blue. Doesn't really do much for the blue out here. It simply just adjusts the blue in here. Maybe a little bit of adjusting, because you can see if you adjust one color in order to keep the balance, you would decrease the other colors here to make it more blue, but this doesn't really look natural, so I don't think I will adjust any blue using curves transformation on this image actually. You could try click on the saturation here as well to see what would happen if you adjust the saturation of this area. Or if you want to adjust the CIE component to add a little bit more vibrance to the area. But as of now, I don't think I want to actually use any curves transformation to adjust the colors on this image. I will close that and I will remove the mask. We will try to see what will happen with the yellow mask as well. So apply the yellow mask and open up curves transformation again with the preview, and then you select red. And you can play around with the red setting here to see, well, there are drastical changes on the red here. You could also decrease the other two to make it extra red if you want to. I really like to have it a bit more red, but I don't see it working out so good with this script. The selection doesn't appear to be that great. I could apply some more saturation or vibrance settings here without making it too bad, but I don't think I will. But you know how you can adjust it right now. So we will remove this mask. We will proceed by opening script and toolbox and then the selective color correction instead. Now you have a lot more possibilities here of adjusting. So we will start with blue, because I want to make this blue area pop out some more. And you can add blue if you want. Keep in mind that you are actually adding brightness here now. So if you remove, you will remove some brightness in blue, and if you add, you will add blue color, making it bluer, so to speak. So we will add some blue colors here just to make it pop. We will also add some saturation to that blue to make it a bit darker, but not so much maybe. I will try to stay away from the contrast now, because I have areas in this image that is on the edge of being blown out. I think I overdid it a little bit with the stretching earlier, so I will apply this. Then I will look at the red here. For red, I can add more red if I want to. Then it will be more reddish color. Maybe I don't want it so much red, but I think I will add a little bit of red color. Or I maybe just want to add a little bit more of saturation for the red. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe I will decrease the luminance a little bit for the red, so I won't blow out these areas, but increase the color a little bit of it. So I will apply that. Fairly happy. Can play around this the whole day, I think, if you want to. Moving on now, we can have low saturated areas in the image when we can increase the saturation. Not so much. I didn't really see any difference there, but it's always good to adjust it a little bit for low saturated areas. And I'm going to select yellow here. Saturate that also maybe a little bit, or I think I will leave that. I will select the highlights here to make sure that I don't blow out anything on this. I can really decrease the luminance a little bit on the highlights, but maybe saturation. See what happens if I increase the saturation on the luminance. I will apply that, and I will select the shadow areas to see where we have some need of more saturation, maybe, or not. You can use the luminance setting to identify, because if you increase luminance on shadow areas, you can see that, oh, it is these areas outside, so we don't really want to increase the luminance anything on those areas, but we might want to increase the contrast a little bit on those areas. And we will also check the midtones here. Where do we have midtones? All around into the object here we have a lot of midtones. We're not going to increase that, but the saturation a little bit. And maybe the contrast just a little bit. I try to keep it fairly subtle changes here, but you know, you have other possibilities of adjusting color here. So when we have finished with the color correction, I will change the ID of the image, and I will save another image called color. Next is to sharpen the image, and for sharpening we want to create a mask, since I don't really like to run sharpening and other things directly without being able to control the intensity. So for a mask here we're going to make a luminance extraction, and we're going to adjust this luminance frame. We're using histogram transformation here. We're selecting the luminance that we just made. You can have a preview on, but you want to adjust the background. It doesn't matter if you clip a little bit here, but you know, remove a lot of the background, something like this, and then you drag the middle lever here to the right, decreasing the intensity of the midtones. And then you can apply that. Now we have a mask here with a little bit less intensity that we can use to apply to the image here. Drag the mask, apply it to this image. If you get the mask visible, you can disable show mask. And then we are going to open up multi-scale linear transformation tool. Now this is also a predefined setting that I have for sharpening. So I use a starlet transformation dyadic 5 layers. I don't really do anything in the first layer, just the smaller body. I want bigger objects, because if you adjust the first layer, you risk sharpening noise, and you don't want to do that. So don't enter anything. It's 0.1 in the first, 0.75, 0.05, 0.025 in the final layer. You can run this on a preview first if you want to. I find it that I use this, so I just drag it onto here and execute it. It doesn't take long on my computer. We can zoom in a little bit on some area, see if it sharpened anything, and then go back and forward. You can see a subtle change in sharpening. You don't want to sharpen too much at this stage, because then it might risk ruining this image further on. You can remove the mask. We'll change the identity here of this image to sharp and save it. If you feel like you want to sharpen this image more, you have unsharp mask that you can use as a process as well. I find that it is fairly destructive. That's why I try to stay clear of it. So yeah. Next step, we want to remove some noise in the image. I don't have much here. We have gained a lot by using DrizzleIntegration, but I would like to run TGV denoise. It is a very mild noise reduction. For this, we also need to have masks. So we are extracting another luminance here. We are naming this loom. We're making a copy of it. Minimize this loom up here. Take the copy, and now we're going to adjust it to not apply the denoising so aggressively. So we are starting off with the curves transformation. We set it to RGB. And we're going to adjust it now, but we're going to use numbers here. So you can grab this little box in the corner down here. Just drag it up a little bit and then drop it, and then go down to the box here and type in 0.2 and then click tab or something to go out of that text window or text box. Do the same here, drag it a little bit down and type in 0.5 until you get a line looking like this. Execute that to the image. Then you open up histogram transformation. Select the luminance clone that you have made. Check to see where the top of the histogram is. It's right here. So take this middle lever, the midtones, drag that to the left, place it under the peak of your histogram, and then apply it. So you will end up with something like this. You can change the identifier to TGV now for this image. And now we are ready to apply this to your image. So take your TGV mask, drag it onto the image here, and then invert the mask. That's very important. So you will protect the right areas and you will remove noise from the right areas. Then you open up the process called TGV denoise. When I open up processes down here, you know, they are always found under process menu and all processes. So if I don't show you exactly where I find them each time, you know why. But when I open them from my icons, I have predefined numbers for some areas here. So you apply the lightness tab with a strength of 4, a protection of 2, a smoothness of 2, and 500 iterations here. Under local support, you click the little folder, you select your luminance, and then you apply this to your image. Now you can also make a preview here if you want to, because this process takes a lot longer. So you can make a preview of a small window, a small section of your image, if you want to play around with the strength and edge protection or smoothness, for example. I usually don't spend too much time here because I know this will effectively add some denoising to the image, and I don't really want to spend too much time doing trial and error back and forth. I usually accept what this process will give me as a result. So let this run through all of the 3 layers here. It will take longer on a slower computer, of course, and faster on a faster computer. The luminance layer will take the biggest amount of time. There we have it. Now it has finished. We can go back here and forth. You don't see that big of a difference, but just a little bit. Remove the mask. We will change the identifier again to noise this time, and we will save an image like I always do. Now the next step is to add a synthetic layer. This can be good or bad. It works wonders with some images. For other images it might just destroy more. So this is a trial and error if you're going to use it or not. But the idea here is to make a synthetic luminance, adjust the luminance layer for contrast and sharpness, and then integrate that luminance into this to make it sharper and add more contrast to the image. For that we are going to open up an HA, the stretched master HA starless that we used in this image. We will take the background, nonlinear HA starless background. We don't actually extract any luminance, we just say that we're going to use this as a luminance. So make a copy, or so you don't accidentally write over. We will now also close the files up here, because we are going to name this Loom. Now we're going to use this to make a mask because we're going to adjust this, but we're going to make a mask to adjust this. So we're opening up a process called range selection that you find with all of the other processes. We will make a preview, and the important thing here is to start with a fuzziness of 0.3 and a smoothness of 5 with screening and lightness selected. The goal is to select the core areas of the image here. We don't want too much of the things sticking out on the side here, because when we are adjusting contrast, we don't want too much of the fainter things. So be fairly restrictive in including things. So something like this, maybe just this area. And then adjust the upper limit here. So you maybe not include the brightest areas. Those will be removed. So something like this maybe. And then you apply it, close this preview and range selection, and now we have our range mask. So if you were to have some artifacts here, you can use clone stamp to remove them, like this little area here. So I will open up processes and clone stamp here. I will remove some of these, maybe. It's most important that you remove the bigger things. If you have some of those, you might have some artifacts in the corner or something like that. Make sure that those are gone. So we will remove, or not remove, we will add this mask to our luminance. That is not really a luminance, it's just the copy of the H alpha. And we will turn off show mask so we can make some corrections to this without affecting things, or without being able to see what kind of corrections we are doing. So we will make this larger, because now we're going to use localized or local histogram equalization tool. Now we're going to run this to create some more contrast between the darker and the lighter areas, using 2 to 3 different kernel radius sizes. We're starting with a radius size of 20 and a contrast limit of 2, and then we're going to use an amount that is between something 0.1 and 0.5. And we can zoom in here while we apply this to see what happens to this area when I apply it. We can go back and forth. Nothing really happened there because the pixel sizes might be bigger. We can see that we slightly affect this, so I think 0.3 is good. So then we're going to move on to a kernel radius of 80. The same contrast and amount, we start with that. You can lower this and you can make it higher. So we're going to zoom in again, and then we're going to run this. And now you see that we made a little bit of a bigger difference here. So I think maybe that was a little bit too much. So I will change the amount to 0.2 and run it again. I just want a very slight change. Yeah, something like that. Happy with that. Next thing, we want to apply some sharpening to this synthetic loom, and we want to do that without a mask on. So a slight 4-layer sharpening, dyadic 4 layers, nothing in the first, 0.1, 0.05 on the second. Remember to remove the mask before running this. And we can zoom in to see, undo it, and then redo it. A slight sharpening, a very slight sharpening, but that's what we want. We don't want to have too much sharpening going on here. So now we are going to attempt to add this on top of our SHO processed image here. How do we do that, you might ask yourself. Under process you have color spaces and LRGB combination. I've run this before, so that's why these are unchecked, but when you come in here you normally don't have anything here. So for luminance you want to select your loom file that you have here. You want to remove RGB. Inherit astronometric solution, that can be checked if you want to, doesn't matter here. Make sure you don't have chrominance noise reduction on. So normally you add L, R, G and B here to combine these together. How do you combine one layer into already existing RGB layers? Yes, so when you have selected your luminance here, just take this triangle and drag it onto and drop it onto the RGB image that you want to add it to. And we can see what effect that had. So if we zoom in here and then undo, you can see that we added some details. We added some brightness and contrast to this image here. And it might have been a little bit too much. I don't think so. I think it will be nice. So I think we will keep that. We will change. We will type in S-loom here for synthetic loom. And we will save that. Now we're down to some more color correction. We are basically finished with our processing here. We can, if we want to, now open up the script toolbox, selective color correction again, to see if we want to make some final adjustments to the colors here. So we did affect the blues here when we did that synthetic loom addition to the image. So we will try to see what will happen if we add even some more blue here. I like blue. I don't know about you, but blue is great. You want to make sure that the blue really pop out here. So, well, I don't want to add any contrast because we have so much contrasts already, but I think that's good. I want to have a clear defined blue here. So I will take the red and I will see what will happen if I increase the contrast of the red here. That was a bit too much, but let me do it like this. I think we will increase the contrast on the entire image. So I will try to see if I will increase the red a little bit and the saturation of the red a little bit. Like that. Apply it. And then I will reset this tool and I will take luminance. Before moving on to the final steps, we can check to see with the script here called DarkStructureEnhance. I run this sometimes and I use the default settings. And this script will actually make some masks and then try to enhance the areas with dark structures in the image here. So sometimes this is good, sometimes it is not as good. We will see what we like it with this. You can see that it has affected this area. If I undo it, it will be worse, but you can see that it has a good effect on these areas as well. So if I remove it and put it on, I think we will go with some dark structure enhancement here. So I will just make a new file as DS for dark structure, and that is the last step. I will now name this starless, set the identifier to starless. I will go into my processing final. I will save it as starless there. I will then open up my SHO stars that we integrated and color corrected earlier. I will set the identifier to starless, or sorry, stars. Then I will save this in my final processing folder as stars. Now, normally I could decrease the intensity here, but since I stretched this until I liked it, I don't see that I need to decrease the stars. If you want to decrease the stars, you can use histogram transformation, for example, and then just take the stars here, open up a preview, and use this to decrease it. But I don't think that's a good way. The best way is to really stretch it to a desired level and then just leave it alone. So now we have our starless and star versions. We will open up Pixel Math here. We will integrate this using a single RGBK expression, just one image. We will create a new image like before, RGB. And with this formula, you are integrating with the screen function. So stars and starless with this formula, and then we will just execute it. What happens when you integrate with the screen is that it might increase the brightness level a little bit. Like you see here, it might have been increased just a little bit. If you feel like you want to adjust that, you can using the curves transformation. Just open up that. Be very, very careful here at creating a small S-curve if you want to. You hardly notice it, but you can if you want to adjust it a little bit. Something like that. And then we will name this SHO sRGB stars. And then we will save it as SHO sRGB stars. You know, that's synthetic RGB, and I really like this result. It is time now to compare it to our old one. How was the processing completed the last time? In 2022, when I did this the first time, what was the result? I will open up an old archived image from NGC 1499 final. Here I have a final SHO image that turned out like this. So it was actually heavier on the colors in that processing, but I have much more details in this image, and the stars are nicer. The colors are correct on the stars. You can see that this color is not the same. It's on a completely different image because I've used BlurXTerminator here as well. I've also added synthetic RGB stars. I also used DrizzleIntegration, so I have higher resolution here for this image. And I feel fairly happy with this result. So if we compare it a little bit here, yeah, this image to this image. You can say, you can like both if you want to. It is exactly the same data. I like the overall feel of this image a little bit better, I think. This feels a little bit over-processed, and I still have halos and stuff here, so I'm fairly happy with this reprocess, and I hope you have been happy with this PixInsight Astrophotography step-by-step PixInsight processing video tutorials. And yeah, I hope you can follow along, and I wish that you have some nice results with your images, and I will keep producing tutorial videos. If you have any requests, feel free to contact me, and I will see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like it and consider subscribing if you're not already doing so. If you want to support my work with these videos, there is an option that you can use in the video description. And as always, until the next video, I wish you have clear skies.